I'm having a great old time. So this is the wiring that we're going to deal with here on the Skyline. So you can see that wires ran every which way, and after seeing earlier what was going on with the throttle, how it was picking up, like we were getting RPM with throttle even though the engine wasn't running. So this is strange. So car stalled on its own, but check this out. If I tap on the throttle, you'll see that it picks up noise. You see down there where it says synchronizing? That's happening when I press the throttle. What we're going to do now is we're basically going to try to undo this wiring, right? So my plan of action anyways, I don't know how well this is going to work, is I actually made one of these at home. But I think this one is salvageable, and I do have connectors here. But what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to start off with undoing the wiring in terms of the plug and play adapter. What I mean by that is that I'm going to start off with the black connector, and anything that's actually from the plug and play adapter is going to go in. Anything that's auxiliary that someone added in after, I'm going to leave it removed. What's really scary about that though is that I have no documentation on what is what. So I am a little concerned about it, but like I said, what I'm going to try to do is just try to remove the ones that I know that are actually factory to the plug and play, and then the ones that are not, I'm going to try to leave out. So I've been depinning this slowly. This is as far as I got here, and so what I'm basically doing is just going over each one of these pins. Now, if this pin goes directly into the plug and play adapter, it gets moved. If it does not go into the plug and play adapter, I'm going to leave it on the old connector. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is that I want to be able to differentiate what is stock wiring and what is not stock wiring. So it's taking some time here, especially because I screwed up initially and looked at it backwards. What makes matters even worse is that when you're looking at the plug and play adapter, the plug and play adapter is a classic that's been repinned for a black, and that's normal, that's not a big deal. But the problem is that these connectors are mirrored from the pinout. So if you look up the pinout for an RB20 classic connector, because the classic connector isn't hooked up, you actually have to look at this, but you look at it invertedly. So it makes it super confusing, and like I said earlier, I got mixed up from doing this stuff, and then I had to move all the pins over. So I basically had this mirrored and I had to move it all over. Not a big deal. Fortunately enough, I caught it fast enough and soon enough instead of doing a bunch of pins, but I did have to go back and go through all my work already. Oh, all right, so I got virtually everything isolated here. So everything off the black connector is now back into the new plug and play adapter connector. So now I've got to go through, and there's like a handful of these loose wires here. So I'm going to find out where these go into their pinout in their respective spots and then put them in. And then it seems like everything else coming off the black connector goes into this pile of whatever this is. So essentially I'm going to do the same thing over here. The good news is on the gray connector there's far less things that are tapped into it, but there's still a lot. So I kind of wasted my time doing my own little connector at home. I thought I was being slick about it, but I guess that was just a complete waste of time there. But anyways, so we've made some pretty good progress. I'm gonna go find out what these last two loose wires are for, and then hopefully they pin into the new black connector, and then that'll be that, and I should be able to start separating all whatever this is. So this is what we're working with today. We're just trying to kind of determine what is what here and just untangle a lot of it. So this connector is the wideband connector. I do know that. The reason why I know that is, one, this is the connector that ECU Master supplies, and then two, if you look at the mating end of it, wherever it's at, all right, I lost it. I don't know where the other end's at. I just unplugged it. Where the heck did it go? What the hell? All right, just so you guys can see what I'm working with here, I straight up lost that connector wherever it went. Where the hell did it go? Well, whatever. So this, for now, this is the other end of the wideband. And the wires, as you can see, are kind of like tangled up together, right? So what I'm going to do now is just basically try to make a diagram where everything went, and basically unplug it all is what we're trying to do. And we're just trying to hook up the required wires. So for now we're only after drive-by-wire, and drive-by-wire has probably 6 to 12 wires roughly. And then CAN bus, obviously these two, so that's super easy. Drive-by-wire, flex fuel sensor, and the CAN bus stuff is all we're trying to separate. So he's got oil pressure and fuel pressure and stuff like that. We're not dealing with any of that just yet. So we want to just do the required wires, and then we're going to go back and I'll try to figure out how to keep this all somewhat nice and tidy and not as convoluted. So everything was going decently well until we encountered this middle pin here. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see it, but the retainer that holds the pin in place is just completely severed. So I'm trying to reach in there with my pick tool to try to release it, but it's definitely not releasing. Another one that I found was this other pin. If you can see, this pin here on the far left in the middle row is actually stuck in there. The retainer removed, but for some reason I just can't get it out. I don't know what it goes to at the moment, but it's just gonna have to stay there. I'll have to make a new wire there. Not the end of the world, but man, what a complete pain in the ass. Ho ho ho, I finally got it out. I was able to take the pick tool and I just kept prying against it, and after 5 or 6 minutes of dicking with it, it's finally free. So the wideband is almost moved over. Okay, so the wideband has one more wire here. that's attached. I'm assuming that this is the power wire on this connector. It's the only one that leads away from the rest of it. Hopefully they didn't reuse this wire color, yellow with white with yellow stripe. Okay, so it doesn't look like they reused this wire, so I'm just going to cut this off for now. Since they didn't reuse this wire, that basically has freed up the wideband connector altogether, and hopefully our wire routing is away from everything and it's now less confusing, hopefully. All right, so at this point I've got the wideband moved over. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to make a pinout for the remaining wires because I don't know what goes where. So I'm just going to make a pinout with their harnesses, and I should be able to hopefully get it all situated. The problem is that because there's no rhyme or reason on how any of this is connected, I'm gonna have to figure out how to label these for them to make sense. And the biggest issue with this, if you look, is that there's a bunch of them that are teed together to other things. So it's like a bunch of sensor wires, or like, I'm assuming that these are like shared power and ground type wires, is what I'm assuming. So there's way too much going on here, and the problem is that nobody knows what's going where. I mean, we were able to kind of guess some of the harness. So this one, since it's coming from the driver's side, we know this is the drive-by-wire stuff. But what I need to do is I need to actually start depinning them so I can kind of route them in better positions. So the smartest move, I think, as usual, is just to take the time to document it. Fortunately enough, the good news is that when they did the wiring, they didn't reuse a bunch of different wire colors. So it makes it a little bit easier for me. And so what we're going to do is, as usual, I've got my Excel sheet here, and I'm just going to start depinning harnesses, and I'm going to label them. So I'll pick an arbitrary number. So this will be like harness 1, and then I'll say, oh, you know, harness 1 red goes to this pin, harness 1 black goes to this pin, and then I'm just going to work my way like that. Just how I normally do things. Guys who aren't new to the channel know this is the way I do it. So there's one pin here that I'm off of what I call harness 4 that has this here. This looks like a bad crimp. The problem is that the ones that are left over, this one I know I cut. I cut this because the pin was stuck, as you can see here. Oops. This blue wire, I know what this is for. I ran this temporarily, so this is mine. This green one here was, as you can see, whoever worked on it before, they just heat shrinked it, so it's not used. The only pin I can think of that it's used for is this guy right here. I don't see any wire coming out of this, so I don't know. This is a 5-volt wire, and I'm assuming that that's what this is for. The reason why I say that is only because that sensor 4, I have sensor ground. This is sensor ground right here. This is 12-volt power. This yellow white is 12-volt power that I cut from something, and that, yeah, there's just wires hanging here. So I'm assuming that this is like a sensor harness, because there's sensor ground in here. There's also analogs 4 and 6. That's what I think this is, and this has got to be 5-volt power, but I'm just not sure. A lot of these pins were crimped incorrectly, so a lot of them have to get fixed. Let me find a perfect example of one here. So there was one on one, oh, here it is. So on what I call harness 1, if you look at it, it's crimped wrong and the rear is bent. And so what was happening, the reason why they weren't coming out was because it was getting caught on this right here. So I couldn't get it out, and some of them I got lucky and I was able to break the retainer off this connector to get them out, and then some it just would not come, such as this brown wire. So I just basically cut it because it's far faster for me to cut it and deal with it later. But so that's all the harnesses there now. And then I found the wideband harness, by the way. It was just sitting right here. Anyways, so that is all the harnesses there. And another thing that I've noticed is that these wires are extremely big. The gauge wiring is a lot bigger than they should be, and I don't know if that's going to be attributed to like the bad crimp or what, but these are definitely wrong gauge wire. So yeah, now we just got to figure out what's what. So fortunately enough, this harness here, harness 2, we know for a fact is the drive-by-wire pedal. And with that being said, I'm pretty sure that this is going to be the drive-by-wire throttle itself. Fortunately enough, there was only one harness here, which I call harness 3, was a single wire, and that's for flex fuel. And then harness 4, I'm not terribly concerned about, with the exception of the 12-volt wire that's ran from outside in for some reason. And that's, I'm sure, is powering the wideband and probably the flex fuel sensor, but I'm not sure.